From St. John's School and Jackson Catholic Schools, Principal Renee Hornby and Tony Shaughnessy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us back.
Thanks, Bart.
Excited for back to school?
Always.
Yes.
It was fun. We got together and had a couple events already and seen the kids and the parents. That excitement's building.
And just in time, a milestone anniversary coming up this year.
A big milestone, 150 years of Catholic education starting here in Jackson.
Awesome. Well, I think the Catholic community knows that St. John Church is the oldest Catholic church in the community, and so St. John's School, the oldest school.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tony, you were joking before the show that you remember the day that the school opened, but I don't believe that.
Oh, well, pretty close. The school opened about 80 years before I was born, but 150 years is something pretty memorable. I mean, even here in Jackson, if you look around, how many institutions or organizations in Jackson can say that they've been around 150 years? Not very many.
No, I think you can count them on one hand, actually.
And
so it's hard to picture what things looked like 150 years ago. Where was the first actual building of St. John's School?
So the first actual building was right near the church. And I'm going to let you
Well,
talk
here it
some
is.
more about the history. Yeah.
We've got the picture.
This is one of our second schools, actually.
that's actually the third school building that was built. They had two wooden structures that they built between 1873 and 1902 is when that academy building was built, and it was massive. This is that was their second school building, actually. So they opened in some buildings that were there on campus in 1873, and then they had like 200 students show up for education at that time. And so they expanded to this two-story wooden frame building, and then they built that academy building in 1902. And that academy building was massive. There's some overhead shots of it, and if you look at the size of the school building, it made the church look like a dollhouse. It was that big.
No kidding. So I wonder what public education was like in Jackson at that time. Probably a bunch of one-room schoolhouses.
They had neighborhood schools all over, and then the centralized high school. And then at one point, they went from the neighborhood schools to intermediate schools for like the middle school, and then Jackson High School.
Some historical photos you brought in.
Yeah, so we started in 1873, but our first class graduated once the high school started, and so we had 3 high school graduates that year, and just had a picture of Father Duffy up, and we were reminiscing as well about the Duffy jug. So when you come out to celebrate our open house this year, we're pulling that Duffy jug out, so come take a look at it. A little slice of history.
All right, Tony can tell us a little bit more about Father Duffy. He has apparently no relation to Duffy's on Ganson's or North Street, but he was responsible for the rivalry between St. Mary's and St. John's.
St. Mary's and St. John's had always had a rivalry, and at one point they had not played each other for quite a few years in football. Father Duffy, when he came here, and he was only here, I think, 4 years. When he came here, he was a really strong proponent of athletics. My father was on the athletic boosters at the time, and he said that Father Duffy came and they said, "We need uniforms and we don't have any money." And Father says, "We'll find money, go get the uniforms." And he and the football coach at the time had found this basically crocked jug in the basement or attic of one of the buildings on campus, and he said, "Hang on to that, that might come in useful," and kind of followed the old Michigan, Minnesota water jug type thing and painted a J on one side for St. John's and an M on the other for St. Mary's, and the winner of the football game got Father Duffy's trophy.
And even though St. Mary's and St. John's don't have high schools, obviously, the jug, though, still plays a part in Lumen Christi's athletics, and I think in perhaps fundraising. Don't they bid on the annual auction on which side of the jug faces out of the trophy case?
They did for years at the Lumen Christi auction. The Duffy jug would be there, and you'd get these graduates of St. Mary's and graduates of St. John's get together as a class. They'd all huddle, and somebody'd say, "Okay, we've got this much money," and then the St. John's people would say, "We'd upped it this much," and so yeah, they used it as a fundraiser for a few years there.
So 150 years, you've got some things planned to celebrate.
We're excited. You know, one of the things about celebrating 150 years is just honoring this commitment from the Jackson people and everything that they've done. And so we're going to kick off on the actual anniversary of the first day those 4 IHM nuns started school on September 15th with Mass. And the bishop will be here and he can celebrate Mass with our pastor. And following that, we're going to have a reception back at the school so we can show off how great it is over there.
And people need to make a reservation for any of that?
You don't need to make a reservation. We also have on Saturday our open house. So from 4 to 7, we're encouraging you to come on over, stop at Mass for getting your Sunday obligation in, to come take a tour of the school. We've been working very hard on collecting memorabilia from all different avenues, from athletics, academics. So it'll be a great trip down memory lane.
Tony, have you found anything as you are researching the 150-year history that surprised you?
Surprised me? I don't know. I think the thing that impresses me about this whole thing is the commitment that's been made over 150 years. I mean, when you stop and think that at the time the school opened with 200 students, most of the people that were members of St. John's Parish were just working class people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't an extravagance that they probably could afford, but they had that commitment to Catholic education. And although 150 years is represented by the current buildings that we have, I think we also need to look at 150 years of the families that made that commitment week to week, year in and year out, to send their children to Catholic schools. And when you look at the number of teachers here in Jackson County, in the Catholic schools and in the public schools, that graduated from our Catholic school system, I think it's a pretty strong testament to the commitment that the teachers, the nuns when I was in school, and the teachers that are teaching in the Catholic schools now have to Catholic education to get that many people in the educational field.
And it appears there's a resurgence now in the Jackson Catholic schools. We've been hearing over the last couple of years increased enrollment, increased giving, and we're seeing more in the community about JCS.
I think we definitely are. We're seeing, as Tony talked about, that archive of history and our families coming back. We're on 4th and now 5th generation of St. John alumni, but we're welcoming so many new people from all over the community. Just today we had another new family register, and excited to become a part of the St. John family.
All right. If you have history, you might want to share it as they gather artifacts and more, getting ready for the big day. Great to see it. Is the school all put back together from the flood?
We are finishing up our final details right now. Okay. Yes.
Yes. In fact, Tony, a former principal at Jackson Catholic Middle School, where we saw kids in one of those black and white pictures sitting on the steps back when it was St. John's High School.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good luck on the start of the school year, and happy 150th anniversary.
Thank you, Bart.
Thank you.
Principal at St. John Elementary School, Renee Hornby, and from Jackson Catholic Schools, Tony Shaughnessy. Speaking of birthdays, we